All right, here we are for another episode of Elephants in the Practice Room. I'm here with a very special guest today. Super excited to talk with Miss Rebecca or Ms. Rebecca Helm. So Rebecca is kind of a big deal. She is in New England. You're in Boston area, correct?
Boston area, yeah, primarily
Okay.
Metro West.
Okay. And she is the director of a music school called Go Allegro. And so she's here to talk to us about that. And she's also president of New England Piano Teacher Association. And are you still on the board of
Still on the board
Massachusetts
of
Music? Okay.
yes.
Massachusetts Music Teachers Association. So she's also been awarded Steinway's Top Teacher Award for several years. She's made it, so to speak, in the industry. So
But you knew me when,
so I was going to say, but I knew her when she lived down the hall from me, and we met up because like first week of college, undergraduate. And I think we were very, very close, very close friends in undergraduate. And I think, I mean, there's a lot of reasons, but I think one of the reasons that we got along was because you were homeschooled, correct?
I was homeschooled all the way through except for freshman year of high school. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And while I wasn't homeschooled, I kind of bounced around and was kind of an outsider at schools. I think we kind of had a lot of things in common there initially, but then we kind of gelled and yeah, we were we were very close.
Very close.
Anyway, it was we have a lot of stories we could tell for sure. But let's kind of start there. Talk to us. We were just kind of talking a little bit, prepping before we got on and started recording, and we were kind of talking about how those years are so formative and how things can really change for you. And you had said that you knew even from sophomore year of undergraduate that you were, sorry, we should clarify. What's your instrument?
So I am a classically trained pianist and violinist. And to be honest, it was up until high school, I was determined to go into music for violin. And then I think this is kind of where I feel like I'm giving back as a teacher too, is that I really gelled with my teacher at the time, a younger teacher, fresh out of grad school, very inspirational, very motivating. And I was just so excited about the repertoire and the competitions and things like that. I was always very driven by that, always very driven by competition. It really kind of kept me going. But then it was, late middle school, early high school when that teacher left town. I switched to another teacher kind of for piano as well, some transitional times. I was also going to 1 year of public magnet high school in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's where I realized that, I couldn't do both. And I was really very, even more inspired by piano and the repertoire and this particular teacher, which is what I really find that teacher-student relationship is so powerful, I think. And so that's when I really pivoted to piano and really said, this is what I'm going to do. It would have been too much to be double major piano and violin with the solo requirements and the orchestral and the chamber music and the accompanying requirements to do two, instrument majors. But that was where I kind of switched over. And through high school, I was just determined to, prepare for auditions. It's a different college process. I think a lot of people don't understand that applying for music school looks very different than other sophomores and juniors and seniors in high school.
100%. Yeah, it's a huge process that you really have to have a good teacher to help you navigate. And I'm sure you do that right now with a lot of your students, correct?
Right. And
Yeah.
understanding that it's not about the SAT or the ACT scores, right? It's really about that audition. It really is the hours in the practice room. It really matters the studios, the people and the studios that you are accepted into. It's a very different process than looking at an essay or a test score for other academic majors.
Yeah, it's largely a personal connection, and like you kind of pointed to, it can be very political, right? It's about, have you been around to the teachers? I remember there were a couple people, one person in my studio in particular, like her mom made sure that she went around and saw all the big teachers, and that served her really well.
Made a
So
difference.
yeah, it made a big
Yeah.
difference. So That's a huge piece of the puzzle. Okay, so did you have the same teacher for violin and piano?
No, no, totally different
Okay,
teachers, totally different teachers, and they were
okay,
staggered when I started with new teachers. They were all wonderful. Like, looking back, they were
yeah,
all wonderful, and I truly believe that every teacher brings something different to the table, but there was something about how I meshed with one of my violin teachers, in my kind of childhood up through college, and how I meshed with one of my piano teachers.
mhm,
It's such a transitional time. Just, you're changing so much year to year, month to month, when you're at that age, right? And so it's, yeah, something small can make a big difference,
yeah,
at that
100%.
age. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, good. Okay, so fast forward, we can just call it out. We met at Oberlin. You decided come sophomore year that you entered as a piano major, correct?
Entered as a piano major. Yep.
Yeah.
Specifically to rework my technique. And so I knew that going into it, freshman year was going to be kind of reworking technique for more of an injury prevention technique. Within 6 months of kind of reworking technique freshman year over the holiday break, that's when I discovered that I had tendonitis in both of my thumbs. And so that was kind of a shock. It was kind of a shock because it didn't seem at all here. I had totally dropped, by the time of audition. I think it's important for people to know too, Sarah, what does a music audition look like? Like, we're talking an hour of music, an hour program.
Mhm.
You've got
Mhm.
all sorts of really challenging repertoire, and it's memorized and ready at the drop of the hat. And they may hear 7 minutes of it max, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so, it was just, I had dropped that whole program. I had come off, a couple of really big competition wins and things like that in high school. And then had to I was ready for it. I was prepared for it to really go down to no repertoire, playing much at all. And then, to kind of have this, as we started, broke it down to no playing essentially, and then to start to build up my repertoire again, it was pretty devastating to find out that I had my first kind of major injury after after this time off of repertoire,
Yeah.
big repertoire. And that still to this day is a little it's bizarre. I don't know what happened, but I know that it definitely made me feel really vulnerable, and like, what am I doing with my life? I felt like going
Yeah.
into school I had these accolades. Yes, I knew I was a big fish in a little pond in Kentucky, and I knew I was ready to be that little fish in a big pond, but to feel like I wasn't playing, I had no repertoire that I could sit down and play at any time because I really hadn't been playing, just working on, just some technique exercises and getting through these proper emotions. It was scary. It was a
Mhm.
big change.
So, okay, so yeah, you had won, like, the Kingsville International Competition or something,
Been part
right?
of Kingsville, been part of Oberlin
Yeah.
International, been part of
Yeah.
the inaugural New York piano competition with Stecker and
Yeah.
Horvitz in New York City, one of like the 15, under 18 students that had spent a week in New York City and been documented on a documentary that
Yeah.
still to this day
Wow.
lives.
Wow.
I had some really exciting, and that was before a lot of these video competitions. You had to go everywhere in person. Things have changed, right? Like,
Yeah.
things are different now. But you had to go there. You would send, a CD if you were fancy, or a cassette tape, or an MP3
Mm.
tape of your, to
Yeah.
make it through the
I remember
first
that.
round. Right?
Yeah.
And then, that preliminary round, you were accepted to go in person, and then you had the rest of the rounds in person. There was no Zoom.
Mhm.
There was no way there was no way around it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was different time.
Different time.
So, okay. So you were, I guess, help me understand, like, you were, doing really, really well, really successful. Did you apply to a ton of schools?
Applied to a ton of schools,
And
a
did you
lot of
get
school. I
in
think there were
to all of
14.
them? Oh
I
my
got
goodness.
into I got into all but one. I got into all but
Wow.
one. And the determining factor, though, was really, it came down to scholarship money. And
Sure.
I really did want to have my technique reworked. That's something that my high school teacher and I had talked about, and that it really, it was either kind of like stop playing and spend a year reworking technique. And that meant I had to stop doing competitions. And that would have also eaten into college, conservatory prep, or
Mhm.
it could wait and just kind of keep pushing through and work on that in college. And so that was the plan, kind of to compete and
Mhm.
feel that it was very inspiring for me to have the competition element. That's what kept me going. That's what, was practicing 6 to 8 hours a day in high school, but it kept me going, like learning new repertoire and being part of all these competitions.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was there were a lot of options, and it came down to money. It came down to money, for
Yeah,
better or for worse,
which
and
it often does, yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so, I mean, for my family in particular, it just was something that I had to, I needed to definitely keep in mind. And so, it was I have many high school students now. We have these same conversations, and many of them are not going into music, right? Many of them
Mhm,
are incredibly, incredibly smart, incredibly
mhm,
academic, and I
mhm.
I tell them point blank, I would have, I don't know if I would have made it on my SAT scores. I don't know where I would have gone without
Yeah,
my hard work towards music,
right.
but I do tell them to try not to stress about it, because what happens, everything happens for a reason, and you can't see until after the fact what these turning points, these pivotal moments in your life will be a trajectory towards the future, right? And so I honestly knew that Oberlin was likely not, it was not my first choice. And a lot of people ask me that now, and it was not my first choice. I really did want to study with this teacher. I thought I wanted my technique reworked, but it was not my first choice. I wanted to be in a
Why?
city.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
wanted to
you're
be
a
in a
city
city.
girl. You're a
I
city
wanted to
girl.
be around
Yeah.
other people. I wanted to, yeah, I just, I think it was a little, it was a little small for me, and just a little close minded in its very liberal way. Right. I mean, it's like, it's incredibly, it's just, um,
Yes, I know what you're saying.
it's just, we were in our own little world there, Sarah, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we remember these conversations of being in the cornfields in our own little, like, it was, I don't know, looking back, it was a very uncollege like experience, I think. Not at all what I envisioned, and I wanted the sororities, I wanted that stuff, but none of the
Mhm.
schools I was looking at really were going to have that. The top music schools weren't going to have that. So I kind of said to heck with that. Yeah, and
So
so
if it
yeah.
would have worked out, like, at the time, if you had a free ride anywhere, where would you have wanted to go?
I really loved NEC, I really loved
Mm,
Peabody, and I really loved
mm,
Juilliard.
mhm. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes good
So these
sense.
are
Yeah. The East
these are bigger
Coast.
places. Yeah. I
Yeah.
knew I was probably heading to East Coast. There were a couple Texas schools.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, I think it was a little too humid,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel you.
you know,
Yeah, and look at where you
and I
are
wanted
now,
a big
right?
name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I wanted a
And
big name.
You're on the East Coast now,
Here
so
I
you
am.
got
Yeah,
there eventually.
that's right.
Um, okay, so sorry to kinda stay here, but there's a lot to unpack, I feel like, with this.
Yeah.
So you decided you wanted why did your high school teacher and you decide you needed your technique reworked? I mean, you were winning competitions, you were doing really well, like, why fix it if it ain't broken kinda thing? Like, what was wrong, quote, with your technique?
Looking back as a 15, 16, 17-year-old when she was telling me this, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't actually know. I know that I respected and trusted her so fully, though, as a second mother,
Uh-huh.
and
Did she start
I don't
you,
actually know.
or
No,
did she
no.
you had switched to her? Okay,
I had switched to her probably around 6th or 7th grade. I switched to her. Yep,
okay.
yep.
And did you ever ask her after the fact? Or are you not in
We
touch at all?
unfortunately no, we've lost touch.
Mhm,
I think she had some personal things go on in her life, and I know she
mhm.
had children the same age as me and my sister,
Wow.
who now have kids of their, full families of their own. But looking back, this would be something that would be interesting. It doesn't, once again, like I tell my high school kids, it doesn't matter now, because I'm grateful for these
Right,
pivotal moments, because had I chosen another school or chosen another, I don't know, where would I be? Where would I be? Would I be distraught somewhere that I hadn't won a major international competition and still fighting for a concert solo career? I don't know. Would I have never accepted that wasn't, the best thing in the cards for me.
yeah. So
So
you experienced so you went there with the intention to change your technique. You changed or you were on the road to changing your technique. Now, as an outsider, I will just an outsider and somebody who lived it. I know you dealt with a crap load of stress that first semester. Like a lot of stress. I mean, if you don't mind me calling out a couple things. Number 1, going from being a homeschool kid to and being in this place in free reign and all of us were away from our parents really for the first time, essentially. You're a super good looking person. You had a lot of dates. So that was a whole other,
Yeah.
it was a whole other thing. Had a lot of fun times. And so but it was a different kind of stress too, right? So all
It was
these
a
things,
different kind of stress.
and
Yeah.
then we
Social.
had all these classes that were like throwing us into literally 12 to 16 hours a day of music, 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 and you need to eat, sleep, breathe this. And always feeling like maybe you weren't measuring up or you had to be the best or whatever. And the constant comparison, all of this. I'm just thinking like maybe this had something to do with your physical, issues,
Probably.
you
No,
know?
I think it all right. I mean, I think it all looking back, of course, I mean, let's be honest, we graduated 20 years ago, right? So this
Yeah,
was like
yeah,
going on, over two
yeah.
decades ago. We were very different people, right? We were very
Right. Oh,
different. Looking
100%.
back, it's easy to kind of
Yeah, see it.
see it. Right, right. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, Sarah, we were trying to hold ourselves together too. We were trying to eat well and we were trying to exercise every morning, right?
We
We had our
did. We
we
tried.
tried.
But then we also had, Sasha go get us the desserts platter at, every meal.
Fourth meal.
Yeah. So there's all of that, right? Yeah, if
Right,
we
right.
I remember we were like, "Yeah, this food's not cutting it. Go get us a dessert platter for the table. Let's just enjoy." I mean, I definitely remember putting on the freshman 15 or 30 or whatever it
30.
was.
I think it was the
Yeah,
freshman 30. I
wasn't a
think
little bit more than
it was
than we wanted. But then we wised up. We got better.
that's right.
Yeah, it's a huge transition. I mean, it's the first time you're away from home for real. You have all this freedom, but then you also have all of these restrictions put on you by not just the culture of the conservatory, but you're sorry to call it out, your specific teacher. Like not just your
Yeah.
teacher, but like all of our teachers
Everybody's
just put this
yeah,
pressure, right? To be a certain thing and practice a certain number of hours and achieve a certain amount of things, right?
right, right,
So,
right,
um, and we know
right,
that, that can all breed a shit ton of, well, I shouldn't swear on this, shit ton of anxiety. It can breed a ton of anxiety, but then not just anxiety then breeds can show up as physical pain, right?
right.
It's a fact.
Absolutely.
It can. And so
Absolutely.
anyway, there's my
Yeah.
little blurb
No,
my
and maybe
for what
I
I
mean,
do.
to this day, I remember calling my teacher over the holiday break and I said, "Why I've never struggled with tendonitis before. Why do I have this now when I haven't even been playing?" Right?
Yeah.
So, you're right. You're right. I
So
think there's something to it.
what did your teachers tell you to do at that point? You had
Oh,
your undergrad, you had
complete
called.
denial. It was my fault. I don't know. It was my
Ugh,
fault.
yeah.
Yeah, 17, 18-year-old me, freshman year was, hey, it's my fault. So the conscientious firstborn type A personality said, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I
Yeah.
doing wrong?
Yeah, this is actually one thing specifically that we do as people who are driven by achievement is we look at challenges or things that go wrong and we say, "What did I do to cause this?" Like it's conditioned. So
Right.
it's not your fault. Oh my gosh.
Right. 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 But,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll always remember the phone call when I called him too. I called him from the gym because I had gone home at Christmas and I was like, holy cow, I need to work out. This was
Mm,
the start of the freshman 30,
yeah.
and so yeah, I mean things changes, Sarah, sleep schedules, everything, right?
Yeah.
Like we've
Oh
been,
yeah.
it's like so if you go into this holistic thought process of like, you're eating differently, you're sleeping differently, or, I had always had even my own room and growing up. So for the
Mhm.
first time I had a roommate, I was in a quad. I had three roommates and they were a
Yeah.
little nutso, right? At times.
Oh,
Sarah
yeah.
can,
Yeah. Yeah, that was an
so
experience coming
it
over.
was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Just like I had a roommate for the first time, and that was a trip,
It had its
Yeah.
own yes, it had
Had
its
its own
own
challenges.
challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh boy. Yeah, I wouldn't relive those years for $1,000,000. I wouldn't do it.
It's funny, so many people, those are their those they talk about those being, they'd love to go back to school. They'd love to be a student again. They'd love to relive those years, and that is not at all how I feel about it either. And I actually, I remember in studio classes it being said, you all have to focus. You all are in this bubble right now, this Oberlin bubble. You have to work hard because you're not in the real world. And I remember sitting through these weekly performance classes or studio classes and thinking, I can't wait to be in the real world. I don't like this bubble. This bubble doesn't feel good. Oh, and that's what, we were in a bubble. Oberlin is a bubble. Oberlin is a bubble, you know, 30 miles from Cleveland in the middle of cornfields. It is a bubble. And some people really like the bubble. And
Yeah.
I don't think I really ever really loved the bubble.
Yeah, I think that there are definite bonuses to it in that it allows you to focus. It is sort of this, what a lot of artists do now is they go away for a retreat or whatever to kind of get away from their life or whatever. When you're 18 years old, you don't see
You
it
don't know
as
what you
that.
want. You don't know.
And you're so enamored with, keeping up socially and just just all of the new experiences that you're faced with that you're not ready to focus. You're not ready to like you've focused so long just to get into the place, and then you're asked to like buckle down and be even more intense. Yeah. I mean, it's rough. I feel like it's really I wish that someone had told me like, hey, you don't need to practice the 6 to 8 hours a day. Like, you need to go to that party on Friday night, and you need to go, just go, like, sit outside and, like, talk to your friends for a while, or, like, go and whatever. Go to this social event and just, like, enjoy your life rather than be so stressed about, like, getting everything learned for studio class or your lesson or whatever.
But I think I had a moment of that. No, I think I
Well,
had the opposite of that, right? I
you
think I had
did,
the
you
opposite
did.
effect.
Yes, you
And
did.
I think, and so I think that too much of either it's a
Yes,
happy medium that I think that we
sure.
don't know, or young people may not know how to navigate, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was probably, you know,
Well, I think
tricky too.
this is one of the reasons why I continue to work on Studio Da Capo and do these podcasts and work with musicians is exactly the reason we're talking about the educational system, whether it be, for young kids or college kids. It's not set up for this whole person approach. It's set up for like, you do these things, this is the formula, this is how you do it. It's like
Right.
very, very in the box. Like we don't expand our thinking. And even in a place like Oberlin, right?
Uh-huh.
That's
Uh-huh.
it is supposedly so liberal, forward thinking. And I'm not just putting Oberlin like, I'm not just bad talking Oberlin like in this way. Like
Right. I think
all
this
of the
could be
higher
many
ed,
music schools. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of higher ed. I would actually struggle to find one where this isn't the case. And
I think so.
where we're not really addressing the student as a whole person and the
Hmm.
experience of being there, and then the trajectory of your career after the fact, it being like a sustainable situation rather than
Right.
just setting people up for burnout, right?
Well, I think we all enter, I think especially the pianist and maybe violinist mentality is that I'm going to be to be a concert artist, right? And we
Yeah.
can't all be a concert artist, right? Because we've all come from our little ponds, if you will,
Yeah.
right? And so we've all been, we're the, you know, all these students, and I say we, but even now, they're the top of the top, right?
Yeah.
It's the cream of the crop. And so, they're accepted, and then they all come in knowing what is going to happen, but how many of those are actually going to make it, right? And so I think that that's something that happened, very early on for me,
Hmm.
was realizing that that wasn't something that I'm not going to this isn't my life. This isn't going to be, you start to think bigger picture after school. You try to, and I knew pretty early on I'm not going to make it by practicing 8 to 10 hours a day. This isn't for a variety of reasons. There's always someone who's better than you, number one, right? But I was also already feeling burnt out freshman year,
Mm,
by this. And, that's why I added the other major and for vocal accompanying and tried to think how is a way that, a perfect way to market yourself as a musician who's not necessarily a soloist is as an accompanist, as a pianist would be accompanying, right? And they had this, additional major for pianists to add. And it essentially took the next, because it wasn't, added on until like sophomore year. It took the next 3 years to really work hard, spending, you know, summers abroad to kind of knock out all those necessary additional language requirements and things like that, and lots of senior recital, junior recital accompanying, lots of accompanists are abused all over the world, but I was like, this is the way I can learn repertoire. I can network with people. This makes me a little bit more marketable, a little bit more, a sustainable, um, opportunity. And I'm still playing, and that was my goal. Then
yeah,
I'm still playing, right? I'm still
that's
playing
wise.
piano.
Yeah, it was a wise move, really. And good on Oberlin. I don't want to sit and dog on Oberlin the whole time. Good on Oberlin that they had that option for you
Right,
to do
right,
something else, you know? So that's
exactly.
great. I do know now that
Yeah,
they are kind of changing some of their majors to be more integrative for
that's
for a
great.
lot of the majors. But are they doing that at the conservatory level? I haven't seen that yet. The rest of the college
Oh,
is thinking
interesting.
that way. Yeah. But
Okay,
yeah, but I haven't seen that for the conservatory. So I don't know. Be interesting to see that, to
we'll have to
check
go back and
into that.
check it out. We
Yeah.
have to
I know. We do have to go. We keep saying we're gonna go. We need to just, go and walk those streets and all the things. Yes.
walk those practice rooms.
Walk those practice rooms. Yeah. If those walls could talk, right? All the hours. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you decided you were gonna go the education route, and then I know that you ended up staying an additional year. What happened?
So I mean, I got to teach at my very first teaching job, beyond like what I had done in high school, for neighborhood children or whatever, with teaching. Got my first teaching job, on the west side of Cleveland in Avon Lake. And I don't believe that that school is there any longer. I think that they're now in Avon. I know. But, I was teaching while accompanying and finishing up the degree and waitressing, a lot of waitressing. You remember those
Mm.
days.
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh, yeah.
I think I was always like, I had gone to Aspen Music Festival one summer, and you could actually it's all summer. It's a very expensive program to be part of, and I was able to go as a 15-year-old, which was something that was really exciting. But it was, I had gotten some scholarship, but my grandpa had been able to help, as my grandpa had been able to help financially, as had one of the families that I was kind of a babysitter slash more of a nanny for, and they were able to kind of help contribute to the fund to send me to Aspen at the age of 15. I actually had my 16th birthday there back in 2000.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was something that for the the for the anyway for the teaching, to kind of head back to that, and the teaching route. I discovered, that's what I was going to say, I discovered at Aspen that you could even usher at
Mhm.
concerts and make some extra money, and so that
Mhm.
was, I started to feel that, okay, well, I can practice, and then I show up to a concert that I'm going to go to already, and I'll show up early so I can usher, and I can, kill multiple birds with one stone, basically. I'm
Amazing.
going to be at this concert anyway. I'm going to make some money. So I think that that was kind of started there. But I think that that's waitressing was what got me through college,
Mhm.
right? Waitressing and
Mhm.
teaching. And so then, yes, while on a brief kind of weekend away after graduation, I was vacationing up in Mackinac Island, Michigan, and which was kind of a road trip up
Mhm.
from Oberlin, and had a really bad bike accident where a horse-drawn carriage ran over my hand and wrist,
Oh my gosh.
and so it
Horrific.
was immediately a um, big change in trajectory of my life from there.
Mm. Yeah, it's like that's like a nightmare. as a
Kind of, yeah, a
a
little bit,
pianist, right? It's like one of
a
those, like,
little bit.
stories you're like, "Wait, what? Serious?"
Right, right.
I mean, I
So that,
actually
delayed
remember I
things.
hate to say this, but I remember when you told me that that happened, I, like, kinda didn't believe you at first. I was like, "No, no, she's kidding, like, there's no way that happened." But then I was like, "Oh my gosh, I think this is serious." Like, I thought it was like a joke at first, and I'm like, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, it's real."
it's real. It's real. It was real.
So rough.
Thankfully, I was able to, I was able to, I moved out of Oberlin, wanted to get out of Oberlin, moved to, very
So
close to the airport.
you had graduated, though?
I had graduated. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I had
Yep.
graduated. So moved very close to the airport. I knew I was going to need to kind of be able to easily get around. Oberlin was kind of far from Cleveland Airport. It was a little bit of
Yeah.
a little bit of a
Yeah.
drive. So moved very close to the airport. Thankfully, was able to keep up with, instead of waitressing, I was able to be a host, a hostess for
Mhm.
a few months. I was
Mhm.
able to still keep teaching in a cast, thankfully.
Mhm.
I think the most devastating part was when the cast came off later in the fall after that. And I thought I was going to the best doctors, the best surgeons, Cleveland Clinic, right? One would think,
Sure.
I was in good hands, right? But I think the most devastating part was when I went in for the final x-ray and they cut off the cast, that the bone had actually shifted and had not grown back correctly. And I remember that this orthopedic surgeon looked at me and he said, "So we have two options. Either we leave it and you're obviously going to quickly have arthritis there. It's going to be an issue, or like long term, or we can go in and surgically break it and put in pins, re-break it." So those are my options when
Oh.
I'm ready to kind of get back into. And so I still have the x-ray that the bone, this outer bone is grown grew together like this. So it's like it's got
Mm.
a, it's not totally grown back correctly. And I don't know when that shifting happened. I can only imagine it was when I moved apartments from like Oberlin. I had a broken wrist when I was like moving from Oberlin to North Olmsted. I don't
Uh,
know. But of course, 22-year-old me was like, I couldn't imagine living alone, going back through, it was my right arm too. So it was like an
mm.
issue driving. It was an issue, I'm right-handed. It was just an
Yeah.
issue living alone. It was just a big challenge. And so I just, once again, if we could go back in time, I would have asked a lot more questions. I would have done a lot more research. I would have, maybe made the same decision, but the thought of re-breaking it when I needed to get back in the audition game for graduate school was like not an option. That just
Mhm.
wasn't even, I just said to heck with it. And so just lived with it. You know, now that I'm, now that it's been 20 years, then now it doesn't bother me a ton. It does get achy when I practice at times. And I feel like, an old lady when I say, on rainy days, I can, especially living here in New England, I can feel it.
Mm.
I know that there's arthritis there. I try not to think about it because what's done is done now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I was just really, really anxious to, I think the broken bone was this like refreshment of motivation to get me out of the Cleveland area. I had then at that point lived there for 4.5 going
Yeah.
on 5 years. I couldn't handle the thought of handling another winter, was like
Yeah.
not going to be, not in the cards for me. And yeah, I mean, that's when it was Valentine's Day evening. I worked a really, really lucrative shift at the
Mhm.
restaurant I'm working on Valentine's Day. It was a huge snowstorm on Valentine's Day, and I had like a 5 a.m. flight out of Akron down to Miami for my audition for the TA position that was open down there. And I was just so glad after that cast came off to just get back in the practice room, just
Mhm.
get learning repertoire, get back on the. I was a 6 months off of playing brought a renewed interest, I guess. I
Mhm.
and maybe
Mhm.
so maybe looking back, maybe I needed that. Had I just forged on to grad school, coming off this kind of like not great feeling after graduation, right? Not really
Yeah.
ambitious, not really, I felt like it was just kind of like I was going to grad school because I needed to go to grad school because that's what you
Yeah.
did. If you took a year off, you were gonna lose your momentum. And I think that's what our parents had told us even after high
Yeah.
school. You can't take time off. You got,
Yeah.
you can't have you can't have a gap year. You got to keep going.
Yeah.
And so I was afraid of that, but yet I had this situation where I physically had no choice. Right? I
Yeah.
physically had no options. And looking back, yes, it was devastating in the moment. But looking back, nearly 20 years, well, 20 years later,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was, I think, maybe a blessing, and
Yeah.
it definitely changed the trajectory of my life entirely.
Wow. Huge.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Huge.
is. It is.
Yeah. So you went so okay, and I'm gonna ask something kind of, I don't know, maybe touchy. Do you ever did you during that last year of school, did you ever kind of wish that you could just stop and that you just sort of had
I
an
thought
excuse to not keep
I
going
thought about
with
transferring the
music?
last couple of years. I thought about
Yeah.
transferring. I definitely thought about transferring at that point, especially with the added major that I had and all
Mm,
these, like, I really, I had to, you probably remember, I had to get some of my credits done over winter term,
yeah.
for opera
Mhm.
stuff. I had
Yeah.
to spend, a
No
summer at the
break.
Oberlin Italy program just to graduate on time because
Yeah.
there were additional credits I had to have, right? And any of the free credits I would have been able to have, they were put on languages,
Yeah.
Italian, German, French, right? And so because of the vocal accompanying, major that was added, and it was essentially like a vocal accompanying vocal coaching program, right? There
Yeah,
was there
yeah.
was that element, right, coming out of that degree. So, I did think about it, but I don't know. Once again, back to, is it our generation, Sarah? Is it our personality? It wasn't an option to kind of, I at that point I'm like, okay, you're 2 years in, 2.5 years in, 3 years in. You're just bury your head, put on your blinders and go. Right. And I think
Yeah.
that that's what a lot of those 4 years were for me personally. Just, you've made a decision. You don't, my mom, we don't look back. You make a decision and you
Yeah.
don't look back. And that's kind
Yeah.
of, I think there was a financial component to that too, because it would have really, I
Sure.
think the financial part of going to Oberlin, that was such a big part of that decision. That thought of starting over, I think, would have made everyone panic. And
Yeah.
I was scared. I think there's a certain
Yeah.
element of fear that was also involved
Yeah. Of
to, like,
course.
to start fresh somewhere else, right?
Yeah. Well, because there's no guarantees, right?
Right.
But
Right.
I also think it's important. I think you're right. It was, the time in life or the time in just the time in society. And I think we still deal with this where we say, well, you've chosen this, you need to see it through. And there's this component of, you've made this commitment, see your commitments through, all of that, right? And that's
Right.
really important, right? As a
It is.
person.
It is.
So,
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
just
Right.
to be accountable and loyal and,
Hmm.
see stuff through.
Right.
But if it's really bringing you down and just so, if you're just I think that it's important to recognize when it's really not serving you. Even when, there's a line when you really should be able to have the choice to do something different. And so it kind of said, okay, so then speed up. You went to Miami, right? After?
Went to Miami. Yeah. Went to Miami. And then, I really got in when I was down there, realized that, I'd gone from two extreme of, like, the Canadian winds of Cleveland and, lake effect weather, which was not my cup of tea, to one of the hottest parts of the country I think you can live in.
Mhm.
Miami
Mhm.
is really hot. And I moved there in August,
One extreme.
and
Oh my
it's like,
goodness.
it was so hot, but I thought initially it was, new beginnings, fresh
Yeah.
start. My arm was
Exciting.
healed. It was really exciting. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I realized that Miami, like, long term, didn't have, they have, the Art Basel and all, these events that are, appreciation of the arts, but not necessarily, they have New World, they have, great things down there. But when it came to, I was doing some teaching, when it came to
Mhm.
piano lessons, I literally had students who were canceling because it was raining outside. And I remember talking to them and being like, it's raining. I was like, well, it's basically the Caribbean where we live.
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we kind of get a daily, like, thunder shower, and
Yeah.
it's like,
Cool off.
maybe 20 minutes and then it's done, right? It's like a
Yeah.
rainforest, right?
Yeah.
And so I just remember, like, being like, this isn't for me. Like, this
Yes.
was, they don't respect my time. Like, this isn't. And so
Yeah.
long term, that's when it was back when we would still find jobs on Craigslist. And that was kind of the biggest joke that my
Yeah.
my boss at the time had. I found this job posting for this really, it was kind of is this too good to be true job posting on Craigslist. And it was for the one corporate school in the country, in the US, which was located at the time in Lexington, Massachusetts. And once again, I flew up to Boston for an audition. I'd initially sent a CD. We were a little bit further, in the early 2000s. I was sending CDs for my initial interview. And then they invited me up to have an in person audition. And, I was introduced to the Yamaha music education system and quickly realized that that was something that really spoke to me. And I was, quite frankly, very, very, very good at. It's a similar philosophy to Suzuki of ear training. It's a listen, sing, play, read, and quickly worked my way up in the corporate school to lead teacher and to a national teacher trainer. I was spending weeks at a time. There was training out in Buena Park at the Yamaha headquarters out in LA. So I was doing teacher trainings out there every summer, staying out there for a couple of weeks. And then became even a kind of an international teacher trainer. So they sent in even like professional recording, video people to come and record my classes, my group classes, and those were being translated into different languages all around the world.
Awesome.
So it was very cool. So I can honestly say it was something that was really inspiring to really bring back my teaching inspiration. And that's
Mhm.
where I feel like it's kind of come full circle is, as we've kind of discussed today, how important, how influential my teacher was in that decision, even back in high school for me. And I feel so fortunate to have that opportunity now with my own students. And I think that's where I think I'm fortunate to really enjoy the work that I do every day with my own students. And I feel
It's
like it's me
huge.
giving back. It's really me, it's truly me giving back the same way that my teachers gave to me, and like I said, a lot of my students, most of my students are not going into music, but the fact that I see them from sometimes I have a couple 3-year-old students and I see them from 3 to 17 or 18.
Yeah.
That's massive. That's massive. That's like life changing and that's so special. And I look at them and I'm like, oh my gosh, you've changed so much. I'm glad I haven't changed so much in the last 15 years. And then I look at myself and I realize that I have. But, it's like it's very special, especially for someone who, chose not to have children of my own, that I still feel like I'm giving back to the next generation in a very
Mhm.
special way, a very
Mhm.
intimate way. And I know that, with these, I think music teachers in general have a very special relationship with their student, unlike other, you go through different teachers in school each year. Those are transitioned, and you have different sports coaches, right? And
Yeah.
you move up to another age group or another level, and those change and those evolve. But it's so special because who else has this kind of week in and week out relationship with a child, and I have adult students too, but I really love the young ones. I really love the
Mhm.
little ones because I started when I was 2.5. So I have a very
Mm.
soft spot in
Wow.
my heart for that. And that, it takes patience, but it takes
Yeah.
a different form of patience because they want to do so good for you and they'll do anything for a sticker. So I do, and I do think that the teacher does make such a difference. And I think even looking back at Oberlin, that was something that maybe that wasn't the best match for me at the time,
Mhm.
looking back, and maybe that was not the best decision that I've made, and
Yeah.
it's not about the teacher and it's not about the student, but it's about the chemistry, right? And the
Sure.
way that they work
100%.
together.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so that's what maybe, wasn't there. I think that maybe I went in with different expectations than maybe he had for me. And I think that maybe I went in with a different mentality. And like you said, Oberlin changed us, right? Freshman year
Yeah.
changed us.
Yeah.
And I went in with different goals and I went in very excited and ambitious, and that was lost too. I can honestly
Mm.
say I did lose that spark, right?
Yeah.
I did lose that excitement, and that motivation, and I can't say I was, my mother can attest to the fact that I was practicing 6 to 8 hours, sometimes more a day. I would wake up in the middle of the night and run my audition program. I would wake up, just to make sure if I can do it when I'm half
Yep.
asleep, then I can
Yep.
definitely do it when I'm awake on caffeine.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I lost any amount of that. I lost
Yeah.
that. And was that me? Was that natural evolution? Was that the school? Was that the teacher? I don't know. Everything happens for a reason. And
Yeah.
that's where I wouldn't have met you, Sarah. I wouldn't have met
That's
many
right.
wonderful people that I did
That's right.
at Oberlin, right?
That's right.
And
And, sometimes we have an agenda, what we think we're supposed to do. And then the universe, God, whatever you want to say, has a different plan.
other
And
plans,
you have to sometimes go through a time of acceptance or whatever, just to get to where your purpose really is and where you're going to
right?
make the most difference. Well, it sounds like you've really come to peace with it though. And you're like, it sounds like you really do have joy in what you're doing. So that's awesome.
I do. No, I do. In the act of teaching, I really do love. I
Yeah.
feel like I'm making a difference in my
The
own way,
teaching.
right?
Yeah. So
I feel like
I'm
I'm
the
making a
same
difference.
way. Right, and you're making the difference, which is great. And you make a great point that private teachers, really do have this bond that so often, I find with my students, they will talk to you about stuff that they won't talk to anyone else about, right? Because they
Including your parents, Sarah. There
right.
are things
It's
I
yeah,
know that they're not telling their parents.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
And it's like it's kind of like this really big like honor, right? For us that we like get to be this
Huge
kind of like
responsibility.
yeah,
Huge
responsibility.
responsibility.
And it's really great that they feel safe enough in that environment. So that's a huge testament to you and what you're doing with them, obviously. Okay, so let's shift a little bit. You say that you really enjoy the teaching, but you also have made this into a business, like a real
That's
business.
right.
And
Yeah.
it sounds like, I mean, like I said, on paper, you have made it, you sustain yourself really well. I think because you told me tomorrow you're hopping on a plane, right? To go
To
somewhere for
go see
30
my
hours.
niece.
Yeah. Just because you want to.
Because I
And
want
and
to.
that's
Because I
great.
want
That's
to.
great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing that you can do that, not just with your time, but with your money, right? So kinda talk to us about your business. Like, you started that okay, so you were a teacher trainer for Yamaha, then you decided you were gonna start your own school. Talk us through that.
I was teaching privately also,
Mhm.
on this, as I was still working with Yamaha. It made it challenging. There were many flights to, there were many overnight red eye flights to Tokyo and back. And I'll never forget, there was one day I laid down at the end of the day and I had actually started the day in Tokyo, done my 13-hour flight back to Boston. Thank God there was a nonstop at that point, because I was flying over there before there was a nonstop to Boston. And then I got back with the time difference. I was actually only in the air 1 hour. And so then I started my whole teaching day. So I
Oh
went
my god.
straight from there. So
No.
I was on it because of the time difference. I
Wow.
beat the clock. I beat the clock.
Oh,
So
wow.
there's a lot of hustle in me. I do
Yeah,
accept that there is a lot of
always.
hustle in me. And so, but it wasn't there so much freshman year at Oberlin. I'm gonna, accept that. Um,
You needed a moment. It's all good.
but there were I loved it. Yeah, and I loved that's where actually a lot of my really big interest of travel came. Actually was this like, oh my gosh, I don't just have to travel on vacation. I can travel for work and like enjoy it and still being productive. And I'm here,
Mm.
this is amazing, and meeting other Yamaha teachers from all over the world, right? So I was always teaching. When I moved up here, Gogo Allegro has technically been around for like 19 years at this point. So it's been around for a long time, but I had started it just as my own thing. And then just teaching piano. And then, people were asking me, oh, well, their sibling doesn't want to play piano, but they want to play guitar. Do you know any guitar teachers? And of course, the longer that you're here, the music world is a small world. And, there are actually many OBs are here in the Boston area. Many OBs do their graduate degrees or, doctoral degrees in New England. And East Coast is popular for that, right? So, I did have some connections here and there. And then I was like, this just, it just felt weird though, because I was giving these names out, but actually maybe they were like a friend of a friend or a colleague of a colleague. And I couldn't really comfortably like vouch for them because I really didn't maybe know them firsthand. Right. And so I felt a little weird because then, if they had any issues or any challenges or they couldn't get in touch with them, I really didn't know what to say, and I thought it kind of came off as maybe a little unprofessional from my standpoint to not be able to really personally vouch for these people. And so then I thought, well, I just need to bring some of these people on. And so it started with a guitar teacher. And then it came on another, I was doing in home lessons at the time. So I couldn't be in different towns, especially with Boston traffic at the same time. And so then it just expanded into what Go Go Allegro is now of over 20 teachers and serving a variety of Metro West, North Shore and South Shore area of Boston. So it's basically every instrument you can think of,
Yeah.
now. So those
Yeah.
instruments that I wouldn't know how to play, but many
Amazing.
do. And it's great because, we do have situations where households have 3 or 4 children and they're all on different instruments, or they're
Yeah.
playing different things. And so this way they still come together for recitals, and they still come together for social events. And it also is really great because our recitals are not just piano recitals, right? They're
Right.
all different instruments, which is really
Very smart.
inspirational too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. You get the whole community together.
Right.
So it
Right.
is really a
Right.
community thing. Oh, I had a question. I was going to ask you about that. So you said you were doing in-home lessons. So
I was
it's
doing in home.
now
Yeah.
grown. It's in-home, in studio, and online, right?
Right. So over COVID was when
Mm-hmm.
we were all online, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then that became some people, it's very convenient,
Yeah.
some people,
Yeah.
especially the non-piano students, they can, no matter where they are, they can hop
Yeah.
on and have their lesson. I personally still have some students on Zoom. Some of them are not even in the Boston area. That
I was going
also
to
was
ask.
something really amazing that happened right over for COVID. I mean, now COVID it's funny because now the COVID kindergartners are now like in middle school, which is like
Yeah. Wow.
bizarre to think it was that long ago, right? Because
Yeah.
they're totally
Yeah. Wow.
different people now. And so in some ways it feels like it was so long ago. In some ways it feels like it was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's now over COVID was when I realized that, hey, like I'm physically, it's not easy to get around here
Yeah.
most of the year. We only have a
Yeah.
couple nice months of the year.
Yeah.
And so I finally had hit the point over COVID where I was like, I don't want to go back to teaching in home lessons personally for me.
Mm-hmm.
That is primarily what we do, is in-home lessons, but I teach from the studio and I teach virtually as well. We have some other
Great.
teachers who teach virtually still, but yes, I decided that I had reached that point in my life that I didn't want to be running around in the middle of winter, which we are
Yeah.
slowly coming out of. It's still in the 30s around here, but
Boy.
it's still cold. I know. And you're probably jealous in your own way, right? But I'm jealous
I
of you.
am. I am. Well, you see, I'm wearing like, a light tank top today. It's gonna be 85. It's like I know you're like, yay, and I'm like, gross. I'm over it. It's we should not no, I wish anyway. It's just too early in the year. So I'm a little scared about the summertime, but I'll be getting out of here a little bit. We'll see.
Okay. Okay.
But I gotta come
Okay.
up and visit you.
So
I really
I know
love
you.
Boston. I haven't been there actually since I auditioned for
So
graduate
that's
or
going on 25 years, Sarah. You got to get up here,
yeah, wow, I do. I
right?
really liked it. In
We
fact,
auditioned a long time ago.
I know. I wanted to go to Boston. That was like my number one pick. So maybe that's why we get along. Yeah.
Well,
And it wasn't because I
to be
didn't get
honest
in,
though,
by the way. I got in. I got in. I just it didn't work out. That's a whole other story in itself. But anyway, this is your podcast, not mine. All right. So well, it's technically my podcast, but you're the
it's
guest
your,
today, so
I know,
we're not
I
talking about
know.
that
It's like,
story.
it's not mine.
Okay. Okay. So, all right. So, from a business perspective, it's a lot to deal with. So, what do you legit do to handle the stress?
It's a lot. It's a lot. There's really, for example, the school is closed on Sunday for Easter, and
Huh?
it will be closed for spring break coming up on, which aligns with the April break for kids here, aligns with Marathon Monday, Patriots Day here in Boston. So it's coming up in a couple weeks. And that is the only time I can really, that the school actually really shuts down, where I don't have to be kind of on call 24/7.
I was good. So
So it's
it's
a lot.
so it is a 7 day a week thing.
We offer lessons 7 days a week. Yeah. So
Wow.
I'm proud
Wow.
of myself. I'm down to teaching 5 days a week. I was at 7
That's
days a week and
great,
running the school for many years, but I'm down to
girl.
5 days a week myself. Still have, I still have wonderful students at 7 a.m. on both Saturday and Sunday, and they are both in high school. And I've accepted that I made a
See
commitment to
them
them that
through,
as
yeah.
long as they
Yeah.
will come, if you can
Yeah.
get a 16, 17-year-old boy on a
Wow.
Saturday morning to a lesson,
Wow.
then
Wow.
so be it. If he's
Yeah.
going to make that commitment, I will too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I've
okay.
got a couple more years.
Yeah. See them through.
Yeah.
Good
Yep.
for you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And
But
then
back to your question about handling stress. I mean, there's a lot, and I think that it takes, I have to say I have a couple of wonderful people on my admin team who
mhm,
also help. They basically kind of manage the phones and the emails primarily when I'm teaching so that I can
great.
focus on that.
Great.
And I think that that support system is what really actually makes a big difference for me,
Huge. Good.
and just having like a team. So it just comes back to like not feeling like you're alone. I think that feeling of isolation is what makes it feel really stressful a lot of the time. But, and then you start kind of going through these mind games of like, is this just bothering me? Would anyone else be stressed out? And so to kind of just have some grounding with people, with another person, another individual, there's a lot of, we manage all the communication for teachers so that they can focus on, they're already doing so much, they're focusing on teaching lessons and getting themselves to the lessons like this. It's very different from a brick and mortar school, so they're not just kind of like setting up in a studio for 5 hours and whoever comes in they teach. They have to navigate a lot too. And so we handle everything else. And we're basically that kind of like virtual front desk liaison for the teachers. So if there's a,
Awesome.
last minute cancellation, we're the ones who grab the text message or the phone call or the email from the parent. And we make sure that we get in touch with the teacher so that they don't have to navigate,
Mhm.
anything but teaching when they're out for the afternoon. But there is a lot of behind the scenes work. But I think that the stress is primarily managed by having, I feel like I have a friendship with my admin team, so I'm very grateful for them.
Good. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Good. That's
Yeah.
huge that you built in that support and you obviously have
Yeah.
to delegate some stuff and that can be tricky too.
Which was hard for
Yeah.
me,
Yeah.
really hard after COVID. I realized I couldn't. Yeah. It was a lot of, I didn't have a lot of admin support through COVID. There was a lot of like sending out Zoom links and everything like that very last minute. But yeah, it feels, and I think that's also maturity on my side, is that I finally
Mhm.
matured to the accepting that things have to be delegated in order for me to do, like to teach, like to still be 100% the best teacher that I can be too.
Yeah. Huge because it takes so much of your bandwidth, right? But
Right. Right.
that right there also helps you handle the stress because you are able to save your bandwidth, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
not be as
Right.
burned out. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anything that you would maybe wanna share with someone who's maybe thinking about starting, just a business period in music, like their own business? What do you wish somebody would have told you?
I think the biggest thing for me is to not be afraid to, don't feel like you have to do it all yourself. So find a good CPA, find a good
Mm,
bookkeeper, have your team, and you may not need them indefinitely. Um, or you may not need them, you may initially need more of their support and more of their help. And it may be costly initially, but it's also incredibly cost. Your time is worth so much, and you have to, I think that's part of, maturing as well, is understanding that you do have to subcontract out some of these
yeah,
tasks that
yeah.
you want it to be your own. So you want to DIY everything, right? And because you don't it goes kind of back to delegation, right? And being fearful of delegating or letting people know your personal finances or your business
Yeah.
finances. You end up spinning your wheels and wasting more if you just don't find the right team of people. I think that that's really big, is to not only, of course, educate yourself because you need to find the right person, but you also
Mhm.
need to be okay with contracting out certain things, that like these legal tax things. These are
Yeah.
these are important. These are important, and they can be very expensive mistakes if they're not done correctly. And I
Mhm.
say that from someone who's learned some of this the hard way, right?
Mm.
And yeah, so I think that that's a big thing. I think you also, running the business is, I enjoy it because I feel like, we have about 250 families, and I feel like, even though they're not obviously all my students, that I feel like it's really, really, I've learned so much from families. I've learned so much from students. I've learned so much from parents, right?
Mhm.
throughout the years. And so that knowledge also helps when when there's some kind of maybe a challenge, maybe it's a motivational challenge. These are primarily, we have adult students, but primarily kids that we're working with. So,
Mhm.
I think a lot of parents just need to be educated on things, and they need to know that they don't feel, I think they also can feel isolated, like, oh, it's only my child who's acting up during lessons, right? It's only
Mm,
my child who's doing this. And once they realize that that's actually the norm, or that other people are struggling, then they start to feel a little bit better about things. And I think that that's the challenge that we face with, like, primarily doing in home lessons, is that they don't see other kids
mm.
having bad days, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So anyway, I would say that a big, though, back to kind of your question about the business, is don't be afraid to contract out, to find a team, a good team of people.
Mhm.
And and people that are on your side, people you do have to vet them, because you have to trust them, because
Yeah.
I still think this is still my baby that I built from scratch, right? From nothing. And so it was initially challenging and to bring people on my team, but now it's really nice having the webmaster to go to when there was a glitch with registration yesterday. And there's, if something from the IRS comes in the mail, I've got my
Mm.
CPA I'm going to reach out to. I don't feel, and so that kind of goes back to, even like, how do you manage stress? It's also having
Yeah.
that network of a team.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, you have that support built in and know that
Right.
you don't have to do it yourself. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Right. So
huge.
it's not
That's
so
huge.
intimidating. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Good. All right. Well, anything else that you wanna cover that we didn't today? Just kinda touch on?
I, man, I mean, we could go on and on about,
Yeah.
fun
We'll have you
memories at
back.
Oberlin.
We'll chat about more. Of course. Of course. All right. So if
Okay,
anybody
Sarah.
wants to find you, what's your website? How do they find the Go-Go
It's
Allegro?
gogoallegro.com. And that is,
Okay.
yeah, where we
Amazing.
do, yeah, yeah, in
And
home
you're on the
lessons and
socials?
lessons in our studio. We're on Instagram and Facebook as well. Yep.
Amazing.
Yep.
Good. All right. Well,
Yeah.
thank you
Thank you
so
for
much for
having me, Sarah.
your time. You're always so much fun. So, thank you,
Oh,
and we will see you guys in the next episode. Have a great day there.